Hey everyone, Victoria's 8th Psychic Medium. So, part 3 of understanding soulmates, twin flames, and soul connections. If you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I definitely recommend that you do that just so you have some background and what it is exactly that I'm talking about. I didn't get through in part 2 a couple of things, so it's going to carry over into part 3. One of the things is unconditional love versus egoic love. And there's a huge difference between these two. And a lot of the soul connections here, currently on this planet, are here so that we can begin to understand what this unconditional love is, and what this energy, which is really source energy, is, and what it is about, so that we can begin to really start relating to other people in a more evolved fashion, not in the way that our ego is accustomed to doing. So that's all part of a global awakening and spiritual awakening process. So we'll talk about what the difference is between those two things. Another one is ways to cope with the dynamics, which tend to be pretty challenging for almost every situation that I've come across. So there are, different ways that you can learn how to deal with it depending on what the dynamics are. For example, meditation, for grounding and centering, Reiki energetic work helps a lot with these connections. So those are some big ones, but there are many other things. A lot of them having to do with changing your thought processes and your belief systems. It's just the way that we think about certain things that happen. We tend to take a lot of things incredibly personally, even though it's not personal. Everyone is on their own paths. Everyone has to experience certain things in order to awaken their consciousness. And more often than not, when we're in our ego minds, we tend to just really assume things that aren't necessarily true about why certain things are happening or why people behave the way that they do. So these connections really require a much deeper sense of compassion and awareness to be brought out in people. So we'll also talk about how to balance, how to clear and heal certain issues. So in part 2 we talked about what are some of the common issues that come up that are triggered off by a soul connection. And these are all things that you eventually have to deal with, whether they come up in this connection or in another connection in the future. So it's not something that can be really kind of escaped. You just end up repeating certain patterns. So there are different things you can do to really, first of all, kind of determine what they are, and then work on healing them, and a lot of that has to do with emotional release. Because we're operating on different levels in terms of our body. So physical body, emotional body, mental body, causal or etheric body. So these are all things to understand, that when you're healing something, we're working on all of those bodies and not just on your thought process or not just on your beliefs. It has to be kind of a core clearing out on all of those levels. So important to understand. So one thing that I do wanted to mention that I'll get more into in this webinar about self-work, that is really the point of soul connections. That is the way that you want to think about them, no matter what type that they are. The problem that most people run into is thinking of something in terms of a relationship, or because you're having this connection with someone, it must mean that there's a relationship. That's not necessarily so. A lot of these connections are really about spiritual awakening and awakening people at certain points along the process. It's about coming into alignment and being in touch with your higher self. And your higher self is your soul, and it includes all of the goals and reasons and points for your being here and incarnating. I will definitely get into, and this video will probably be a little bit more advanced than the first two, my current understanding of the twin flame connection and what it is really all about. And the most important thing for those is to understand that we're talking about a union, not a relationship. We're talking about a unification, a harmonization of energies, the masculine and the feminine energies, between what is essentially a one soul being in different manifestations. So the goal there is not necessarily, because twin flames are really here to be pioneers in uprooting some of this egoic thinking in terms of the masculine and feminine, to be an example of a new template of relating. And that is really their purpose. So, it has a higher purpose. The mission with twin flames is you, number one, being in alignment with your higher self, maintaining your connection to source. And that has to be the number one priority. That has to be the way that it's thought of. And, these are contractual situations. There's free will involved with how they play out, but they have very specific purposes. And so they have to be respected for that and what essentially their point really is. And so many people who think they are twin flames are not. It's not an arrogant or like a hierarchy type of thing. It's something that I resisted kind of understanding about myself for quite a long time, because there's a lot out there about, these twin flames are advanced beings and graduate souls and blah 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 blah. It's not quite as hoity-toity as all that, but it does have a specific purpose, and it's to root this new understanding of love into the collective consciousness. Honestly, that's what it's for. So that's really the best way of thinking about it. So before this video gets too long, I'm definitely going to go, this will be the last one in the series, but I'll definitely go into more depth about what I've been learning and understanding about the twin flame connection, which has been really just a recent understanding from my point of view since last year. So I will have a lot more to say about this in the future. So yes, this webinar is next Wednesday, the 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that you can join me, and blessings to you guys, and thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to helping you coming into greater alignment with your higher self and becoming greater love and light in this life. Take care.